Hey, thanks for stopping by Duckman Cycles of VW Garage. I'm your host, the Duckman. We're back today with my 1956 oval Beetle. This is Eleanore right here, and she's a chop top. And for those of you that are just visiting the first time here, the reason why I chopped the top on this car is because I got this car, it was completely obliterated. It had spent several days under 6 feet of seawater during Hurricane Ivan and then left out to rot for 10 years after that. There was hardly a panel, in fact, there was no panel on this car that didn't need some kind of repair or entire replacement. So I rebuilt the car from what I had, which was mostly parts of other Beetles from other years, and did the best I could to make it look like or retain that it was originally a 56. I just didn't feel good about getting good 56 Beetle parts to rebuild this car from elsewhere when somebody else could be using those parts to restore a perfect car. I knew that this car wasn't going to be perfect, so I did the best that I could, and what we wound up with was a fat-ass chop top oval. So this is Eleanore. Well, anyways, what we've been working on down here is my Porsche suspension on this pan. And this is the reason why I've got it all torn apart. Now, as you can see over here, I've welded in the back side of that shock tower, and the reason why is because I chopped off the front side of the shock tower. And I had to do that because I wanted these Porsche 944 spring plates to clear the shock tower. Now, these have a bolt that sticks out the back side. They're not flush like that of a stock Beetle spring plate. Now, could I have used the stock Beetle spring plates? Oh, sure I could have. You know, I could have cut that notch a little deeper and drilled out the holes to make them fit onto the 944 swing arm that you see right here, but I wasn't going to do that. I wanted to retain these adjusters. I just thought the idea of having those was pretty cool. And yeah, it made me a little bit of extra work, and I'm sure probably nobody's ever going to really notice it because they're going to be blocked by the wheels, which are under the fenders, which are, yeah, anyway. But I thought if I ever decided to autocross the car, it would be nice to have a very quick adjustment that I could play with myself and go from there. And autocross is something that I've been considering with this car. This car is going to be really cool. Drag strip, maybe. Autocross, maybe. You know, I'm definitely going to be cruising around with it. I will probably, down the road when I get a built engine this thing, I'll probably be picking a couple of illegal drag races, if you will. Kids don't do that. No stupid shit. No stupid shit. I have removed the engine and transmission that you saw. I've just got them wheeled away over here on a platform right now for the moment. I'm actually going to be doing a little bit more rear end work over here. I just haven't decided how I want to handle that just yet. But I figure I'm going to square away these torsion bars and spring plates and get all this stuff fixed and mounted properly. And then I'm going to start digging into some new places. But this will hopefully be the last spring plate video. Because really all I have to do is a little more welding on there, and then it's just some assembly work, putting it all together and make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. And I'm highly confident that everything's going to be just fine, but in order for me to get that far, I have to, of course, put the parts together. So anyways, don't forget, you guys, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. Don't forget to pluck that little dingle belly down there next to the subscribe button so that way you get updates every time I upload a new video. And as I've learned real quickly, the Eleanore videos are much more popular than, let's say, the Doodle Bastard videos. And I uploaded a Doodle Bastard video where I made this gas tank and did a few other things, and I was quite shocked that the views on this bike weren't as high as they would have been otherwise. But Eleanore certainly gets the most views. Anyways, check out my other channels, Duckman Cycles, VV the Duck VV, and Ski to the Duck. And don't forget to get up on Facebook and do a search for Duckman Cycles of VW Garage and join the group page. There'll be a discussion about this bike, maybe the Pook Moped, and quite possibly also the Doodle Bastard. So for those of you that are just watching for the first time, don't forget to subscribe. Let me know who you are. Post in the comments. Post in those comments. I want to talk to you. I want to see who you are. So anyways, thanks for watching, you guys, and roll the intro. Ta-da! Last we left off, we needed to weld in a little section here in the bottom. I put in 3 pieces to box off the backside of that. Yeah, my welds do look a little bit crusty weldy, but that's just because it's actually a flux core welder, and it has a tendency to spatter real badly. And for those of you welders that don't use flux core, that say that my welding is poor, it's not really so much that my welding is poor, it's just that the product isn't really as good as standard gas welding. I'm going to use up the rest of that weld wire that I have, and then I probably won't be going back to it because I'll be running gas after that. I do have to put in the 4th panel. It's going to go there on the bottom. I've already done that on this side. But we're going to hit that up too, and then I'm going to lightly go over it and hit it with the grinder because I do have some stalactites sticking out in a couple places. So I'll whack those real good. You hit the high spots, and then we'll soak it up in some acid and get the thing ready for paint and do some assembly. But first we're going to go ahead and cut that piece out and get it welded in there and see how that turns out, and then we're going to assemble the whole rig and see where we are. Okay, got all my welding done over there. I'm going to let that side cool down a bit before I deal with that. Meanwhile, on this side, let's go ahead and start assembling this thing. Okay, before you put your torsion bars in, it's always a good idea to get a good look at them and make sure that there's no ding marks or really deep scratches. Now, these things are typically plastic coated. They're not really painted. There's like a thick plastic coating on it. And if you get a little mark like this right here in the plastic, you're okay. But if you start to see some metal through it, and it's actually scratched into the metal, you've just formed a weak spot. And this torsion bar is actually a spring. And if it has a little ding in it, when it's under torsion, the load is actually along the surface, not so much the core. A lot of these are actually made hollow, but the load is at the surface. So if you've got a crack in the surface, that's a weak spot. So your torsion bar will actually break right in that surface. These are looking pretty good. I'm not seeing any marks in this one. Figure I'll get a good look at this one as well. In fact, this one looks even better than the other one with less ding marks in the plastic. Am I seeing metal in that one? No, no metal. It's just plastic scratch. Okay, now on the ends of them, on the big ends, you can actually tell which side it's supposed to go on. This one's a left, and this one's a right. We're currently on the right side of the car, so we're going to take the small end here, and we're going to wipe it off and just get all the dirt off of it, and then it is going to go in first. Alright, now I'm not too worried about ride height right now. Right now this is just dry fit and assembly. At least let's see how this all turns out. Somebody told me to use my ball powder on these things instead of grease. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. I could see why that would stop rubber from being sticky. These are actually bearings. You know, despite being a rubber bushing, this is actually a pivot point, and the spring plate will actually pivot on it or in it. Alright, this one's going to go in here like this. And we've got the other one that goes on the outside of the spring plate. This actually seems like it's working pretty good because it kind of dries it up. So you use real talcum, and this is actually real talcum powder, which is kind of hard to find anymore. This rubber is actually still in good shape. There's a little bit of excess, which typically gets squeezed out of them around the edges. Now, this one is actually new. I didn't replace it that long ago. Ordinarily, when you assemble this, you would put your angle gauge on here. And whatever the measurement is on this side, you'll do the same thing on the other side. And this time around, I'm really not all too concerned with that, because right now this is just a dry fit. Let's just see how everything turns out. Sometimes it's recommended to use longer bolts to pull this all together, but I have been pretty successful. Alright, we're looking at everything tightened down. Of course, it's not properly torqued yet, but looking at everything tight, checking out to where the spring plate deflects off to and where it hangs out here. It actually looks pretty good. It's cleared on the backside, so I don't have any concerns here with fitment at all. So this is looking good. So let's add the swinger here, put that on the back next. There's my two washers, and here's my special bolt for it. And we'll get that sucker hung on there next. Okay, first things first, let's pull out the pivot bolt. Don't forget, got washers on there, 2 of them. This can be a little tricky because this thing is a little awkward shaped and heavy. These 2 washers actually belong in here on the outside between the swinger and the chassis. This bolt is kind of an interesting design. It self-centers when you screw it in. It's got a interesting stepped shape to it. This part threads in. This is the part that the pivot turns on. And then this part actually slides into a little socket. So it self-centers itself when you put it in. Really an interesting design. Now we've got to drop in these 3 bolts here. And this one is the one that's supposed to be a special eccentric bolt. That's the one I don't have the proper eccentric bolt for that I'm going to pick up. I've actually got one on order. But temporarily, just to make sure that everything operates properly, we're going to go ahead and stuff a bolt into place and hold this in here. Alright, put another one through here. Now, without having everything tight, I can kind of demonstrate how the camber adjustment works on this. Those 3 bolts that I just put in up there, there's that center hole that's in there that uses a special eccentric tool, and the eccentric bolt that's supposed to be on the front. And when you tighten or loosen that bolt that's on the front, it causes this entire swing arm to twist. And you probably noticed how I just twisted it now with the bolts loose. But the whole arm will actually twist on this axis. And what that causes the wheel to do is go like this. And it's not much, it's subtle. I think you get about 1.5 inches plus or minus either way, and that's what sets your camber. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around how it works at first. There is somebody on YouTube that made an excellent Lego model representing the 944 rear suspension and how this works. And it was really, really hard wrapping my mind around it before I saw that. Once I saw the video, it clarified everything that I thought how it worked. And it made a lot more sense, but this is one of the reasons why I added the 944 rear suspension, was to correct that camber so these wheels don't tip way the hell in when I lower this car. Alright, we're going to get those 3 bolts tightened up, and then we're going to slap the wheel on here, and then we're going to do a little bouncy up and down, and let's see what happens. We are effectively mounted. I don't have a shock absorber on here now, that's not a big deal. But right over here on the rear hub, I can now stick my disc, I can stick the spacer, and I can push the wheel on there. Okay, 1 spacer. Went on a little crooked. Like my little center cap there is a little loose. Before this thing makes it out on the road, I'm going to have to snug that up. Yes, there's supposed to be 5 lug nuts here. I only have 4 because this wheel formerly had an adapter on it, and the adapter didn't have that 5th stud in it, so I never bothered to put those on. But that should be enough to hold it, to push it back and forth in the garage and get a little bouncy on it. Okay, let me pull out my dolly here and put this sucker back on the ground. And here comes the ice cream man to interrupt the fun. The creepy ice cream man. Anyway, that's how that goes together. I had a couple of things prepared. For example, the rubber bushings that go on the spring plate on this side, I had those already removed. I should say the 944 ones were already removed from the 944 spring plate, and the Beetle ones were put on. Also at the bottom here, at the bottom of the swing arm where the pivot point is, I actually pulled the 944 bushing out of that and replaced it with a Beetle IRS bushing. And I'll demonstrate that process real quickly in this video too, because that's going to be next before we can get the other side mounted. Now it's kind of interesting when you think about it, because the 944 is actually, the 944 rear suspension is actually an upgrade or the future evolution of what was the Beetle suspension. But the rear pivot bolt is just a simple little bolt that just goes right in. I mean, there's nothing fancy about it. It's probably a grade 8, you know, just a bolt. The IRS pivot bolt on a Beetle is much more sophisticated. The pivot point is much larger. It's just everything about it is bigger. I mean, it won't even fit into that bushing. Now, this is just a standard replacement bushing for a Beetle. And what's funny is the outside diameter of this is actually the same outside diameter of the 944 bushing. So I can take this bushing out, put the Beetle bushing in, and then the Beetle bolt will fit right through it and it'll mount in the car just fine like it was supposed to be there. So it's kind of interesting that they built everything that way. So it's a matter of getting this bushing out of here, and what I've discovered is you just gently pry and you can get the metal, what I'm going to call a mushroom, out of it. Just run around it and just pry it and get started. There are probably better ways to do it. There it is. And that's why I call it a mushroom. That makes sense, doesn't it? That's half the bushing. You see how the outside diameter of these is about the same. And this is actually going to just fit right in there. I'm going to grease it first before I push it in. And of course clean out the hole first. But yep, that will go right in there just like that. I'm going to flip it over and remove the mushroom from the opposite side just the same. This guy has to come out too. And once we've got that apart, we're ready to start reinstalling our stuff. This ought to just slide right in here now because it's nice and slick. Yep, effortless. Alright, here's the piece for the other side. Got a little bit of grease on the inner, a little bit more on the outer, and it ought to just press right in. It did. In the center bushing should slide right in there too. I've already got my insides greased. I might have to tap that with a hammer a little bit. It's getting a little bit stiff. Oh, yep, there it goes. Nope. The Duckman vice grip hands got it into place. I think that's in as far as it's going to go. Dirt off of here. Alright, now it's ready to be installed into the car. Now these bushings on the 944 spring plate are a real bitch to remove. They're actually bonded to the spring plate. And no, they can't be left on here because the Volkswagen Beetle ones are different. The Beetle one is about the same diameter on the outside here, but it's not as tall. And this one has what they call the knobbies on it. So there's 4 knobbies that stick out of it. Kind of shaped kind of like the capital letter K crossways over there. So this has to come off. And it's not as easy as just hitting it with a razor knife and trying to peel it off of there. That doesn't work. In fact, some of the aftermarket 944 guys created a special tool just for removing these things. And it consists of a pipe, which is the same inner diameter as this pipe is on the outer diameter. And they heat it up with a torch and then press the pipe into it. Once they've got that, then they cut it with a razor and then they peel the thing off. And as far as the one on this side is concerned, once they press the pipe down onto it, they just twist the pipe and then lift it right off. It's quite an amazing process. It certainly makes the job a lot easier. But because I'm doing this one time for my car only, I couldn't justify buying a special tool, seeing as how the Beetle ones aren't going to be as hard to remove in the future. What I've found that seems to work pretty good to get these bushings off is I put them in the oven. The whole damn spring plate heated up to about 500 degrees for about 15 minutes. And you make sure that you have all your fans on in the house, and if you have any kids or a wife, you know, give them $100 and tell them to just leave for the day. turn on all the fans in the house, open all your windows. I don't care if it's the middle of summer, I don't care if it's the middle of winter. You're going to want to air that house out because it's going to get a little smoky. This rubber will not burn, but it'll smoke. But what happens is it starts to separate from the spring plate very easily once it gets soft. So it's just a matter of picking away at it and getting this entire bushing right off the spring plate. Now, this was practically impossible to do before when it was still at room temperature. As you can tell, it's very vocal as it peels. It does a lot of popping and snapping sounds. But you don't have to use a whole lot of force. Just wedge yourself in there and continue to pry it the whole way around. I can tell it's starting to cool down. It's starting to get a little harder to remove. Yeah, if it does cool down, you know what the answer is. Just throw it back in the oven. I left the oven turned on just in case it has to go back in there. Now, if you've got a grinder wheel with a big wire wheel on it, this would be a good time to polish all of this off. And you want this all to come off, so you see the shiny metal underneath. That's kind of important because when you go to put that new bushing on, you want that new bushing to be able to pivot on this shaft. And if you have all kinds of lumps and crap left behind, it's going to grip on it. And that's counterproductive from how it's supposed to work, because this is supposed to be a pivot point. Well, we're about to get rained on again. There it is. And it's headed towards the south, which is where I'm at. It never fails. It's actually done a little bit of dripping out here. If you look closely, you can see the spots of rain. Not enough to disrupt my work, but enough to annoy me. And every time I look at this car, I really get excited. So anyway, we got half the suspension put together here. I want to put the other half of it together, but after it came out of the oven and I hit it with the wire wheel, I've got it completely spotless here. And it's ready to be assembled, but it's still too hot for me to touch it. So I've just got the fan on it, trying to cool it down. I would throw it in the water or something, but because it's a lot of exposed steel, I really don't want it to try to start rusting on me, so soon. We've got the torsion bar for the left. You see the L on it right there on the end. Pull this paper out of here. They're putting it in dry, as we do know, because this is just a temporary installation. Get that put into place. Now the spring plate, I can pick it up, as you can tell, because this end is just a little bit warm, but this end is still, it's still scalding hot. I can't hold it for more than but a moment. So I have to put that on carefully. Oh, I didn't put the damn bushings on. You idiot. Alright, let's try that again. Put this on here. It's cooled down in the time that I assembled it. I know this isn't going to be even with the other side because I have not taken any measurements here at all. Now these are the original Volkswagen bolts that are on here, and why they didn't come with longer bolts is anybody's guess. The prescribed method usually is to run longer bolts in. Once you've got 3 of the longer bolts in the 4th hole you put in your short bolt. Then you take out the next long bolt, short bolt, and go all the way around. Now that's stupid. They should have just put long bolts in all of it to begin with. Didn't realize it, but I accidentally shut the camera off when trying to move it. But anyway, we've got the spring plate now screwed into place. And as I said, between left and right, I did not use the angle meter on there to determine which side is going to be higher or lower, or see if I can get them even. That isn't what I'm trying to do this time. I just want to see if I can get everything together and bounce on it and see if there's any restrictions or if it's going to be moving smoothly. But the weather is starting to look pretty bad. Yeah, all that rain is about to nail me, so I got to start working a little faster. Anyway, I got to mount on the trailing arm, and then I got to throw the wheel on it, and then it's got to go in the garage. don't know how much time I got, but we're gonna give it best effort. And put it through here. Our 2 washers, and they go on the outside. Quickly put this together here. Tighten up these 3 bolts here, and then our wheel goes right on. Oh boy, the wind is starting to pick up out here. Gotta move faster. Okay, we are snug. Let's go ahead and put that wheel back on. Now this wheel won't need a spacer because over here I have not yet put in the longer lug studs. Because it's going to rain, I don't have the time to do it. I'm just going to throw that wheel right over that disc. Okay. That's why it wasn't going on. One of the bolts was still in the wheel. And then we get the lug nuts. Nice, right down the sidewalk with a dirt bike. Amazing what people get away with in this neighborhood that I could never get away with. No, I'd be looking at $300 worth of tickets, probably lose my license for no insurance. And why would they get me? Because I'm white, and they know I can pay it. This world sucks. This world really sucks. All right, we are on. Drop that jack. All right, here comes the moment of truth, and let's see if everything moves the way it's supposed to. Or if it's gonna get caught or bound up or what. You can hear them bushings. Obviously the bushings need some lube. I'm gonna call that an excellent passing grade. I think I did a great job here. Can't believe how wide the stance is. That is just amazing. And it's still going to go out about another, what was it, 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches or something to the left. Because that side does not yet have the wheel spacer on it. Well, anyway, I'd say that the test run here was pretty successful. What I do need to do next is I do need to put the longer lug studs on this side. I need to take everything apart, properly lubricate it, and put it back together. And once that's done, and I'm going to actually do most of that off camera because it's not really interesting. You guys, you've watched me do this once already. But I'm also going to start pulling apart the rear end here, and I'm going to do something that makes a custom adjustable ride height. And I've been talking about it for a while, and I'm not going to give too many more details to it because everybody has been asking way too many questions about it. And I'm not going to demonstrate it or show it until it's done. But in the next video, one of the things that we're going to do is start cutting apart some more of the rear end here and start doing some more modifications. So as always, you guys, if you like my videos, like, comment, subscribe. Please pluck that little dingle belly down there next to the subscribe button so that way you get updates every time I upload a new video. I'm going to call this a success. This looks really good to me, really sharp. I mean, everything seems to be working just fine. It bolted together well, and everything is clearing the way it's supposed to. So all the modifications that I made should be just fine, but only time will tell. When I start hitting the bumps and running through the potholes, I'm going to break my rear end off. So anyways, don't forget to subscribe to my other channels. You know, VV the Duck VV, Duckman Cycles, and Skeeter the Duck. Don't miss a thing. We've got multiple channels, and I'm always uploading something different. Please check me out over on my Instagram, something I've never shared with you guys before. Go to Instagram.com/VV the Duck VV, and you'll see some photos of this that I have not released videos of. You'll see some up-close stuff and a few other things that I've been working on, and sometimes even you'll see a picture of my dinner. You never know. Please check me out over on my Facebook. Go to Facebook.com, type in Duckman Cycles of VW Garage, and join the group page. There'll be a discussion on this, as well as some of my other projects, and a bunch of other things that people are sharing. There's always something new going on there, and it's certainly worth checking out. I think it's cool. I like hanging out there. You guys that are sharing up there, that have joined, are just really awesome, and I really appreciate it. I mean, we're having a good time. If you'd like to email me, this is something I don't share a whole lot, but I'm going to share it again. It is duckmancycles@duckshit.net. That's right, you can email me at duckmancycles@duckshit.net, and I'm not going to put that down in the video description because spam bots pick up that crap. But anyway, until next time, thanks you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.